Good afternoon, everybody. As those who have been here for some time know, I must say this at the beginning of every long session of evidence. The proceedings today are being live streamed. Those who have got electronic devices may report what they see and hear in the hearing room, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're describing. That's to fit in with the live stream, which is also subject to a 10-minute delay. Devices may not be used for recording or photography.
Thank you. Jessica, I want to ask you to have a look at a report from around the time, just before the Great Hookley Farm raid, intelligence that the inquiry attributes to HN2, MPS 0742252. The 15th of May 1992 is the date of the report, so just a bit before. We may have looked at this earlier, or a similar report at least. We've got a report about somebody whose name is redacted for privacy, associates JRA and you, who we looked at earlier. I'll let you check the cipher list. And this is the subject of the report is the same as the report that we looked at earlier in connection with JRA.
Yes.
It's a female subject. And you are listed as an associate along with JRA, and in this case, Andrea McGann's name is also there. I'll come back to ask you about her in a moment. And can we look, please, at the content of this report on the next page? Right, so it's about the subject. Privacy is a committed animal rights activist and ardent anarcho-feminist. She has recently become involved in a small group of equally committed activists who intend to take part in an ALF-style liberation raids on chicken farms in the Surrey, Sussex and Kent areas bordering London, and has already been surveying likely targets with Privacy. Privacy has no previous experience of ALF actions, but has been looking for equally committed and trustworthy activists from hunt saboteur groups for over a year to form a new ALF cell. The group includes Andrea McGann and ASW, that should, I hope, be on your list, who have a track record of successful liberation raids. So it seems likely that she will remain confident that the cell will be successful. This would be, wouldn't it, May 1992, around the time that the Great Hookley Farm raid was being planned or thought about.
Yeah.
Were you aware of this individual, whom you are reported to be an associate of, trying to put together a group of equally committed activists to take part in ALF-style liberation raids on chicken farms in the Surrey, Sussex and Kent areas?
No.
Were you approached as what is referred to here an equally committed and trustworthy activist? Was there any suggestion that you might be involved?
Not by her, no.
By anyone linked to these people? Are you aware of any?
HN2, but no, not the, no.
And Andrea McGann, I think, is somebody who you knew or were aware of at this time?
Yes, yeah.
How well did you know her?
I think, because, 92. Yeah, I don't know that I would have known her. I knew who she was. I think we were like members of the same sort of group, but I knew her after this. We shared a house together, but that was later than this.
Is that the address that we're calling your South London address?
Yes, yeah.
All right, we'll come back to her in that case. And ASW, was that someone who was known to you?
A hunt sab.
It suggested here that they had a track record of successful liberation raids. Was that something known to you that you could comment on?
No. If they did, I didn't know.
All right, thank you. And just before I move on to a different topic, you mentioned in your witness statement that you became aware that whilst you were in France, HN1 took people from, you describe our shared house, to the Grand National Demonstration in the year it was cancelled.
Yes.
So that would have been 1993 if you were in France. Is that right? If it takes place?
Well, it depends when. I'm not sure what.
It takes place usually, I think, in springtime, so March or April.
Yes, it would be 93, I think, yeah.
I wanted to ask you this. Were you ever aware of HN2 taking people to the Grand National?
Not that I am aware of, no.
Thank you. Can I come on then now to ask you about the circumstances in which you moved to France in 1992? You say in your witness statement that by the summer of 1992, you had been you'd been in a relationship with HN2 for a few months.
Yes.
Does that sound about right, timing-wise?
Yes.
And you were made aware that there was a job vacancy that would require you to move to France. Is that
Yes.
right? And you would be caring for the dogs and cats of, I think, do you want to tell us?
Yeah, Princess Monaco.
And it was caring for dogs and cats, is
Yes,
that
yeah.
right? You say in your witness statement that you consulted HN2 before taking up the job offer.
Yes.
Can you just say why you did that, first of all?
Yeah, because we were in a relationship and it was, he had a say. I think, it was, I asked him, what do you think I should do? Because we'd been together for a while and that's, that was only right that I should have asked him. And I was hoping that he would say to go, because if he'd have said stay, I don't know whether I would have done. But as it turned out, he was like, well, no, go, but like for a year. So I don't know why like a year was said or whatever, but he did. And, even now, obviously that's the one sort of, I think the one, well, I thought, I don't know whether it was a decent thing. I don't know, but it seemed like, that's the one decent thing that he did was to say that I should go, because it was, it was a really good opportunity for me. And he didn't make it difficult for me to go. And so we stayed in a relation, we did the long distance relationship.
And you just mentioned about going for a year.
Yes.
Was that the length of the job offer? Was that something he said? Can you
No,
clarify?
that was something he said.
And had you had any idea about how long you might go to France for before he said that?
It was probably more than a year.
So you had in mind that you might stay longer?
It was a really good job, yes.
And did you do anything on the back of him saying go for a year in terms of what you said to the people who were going to employ you?
No, I was, it was, that brought me like a year to make a decision, whether I wanted to stay or whether, I didn't. So it brought me time to make a decision. So yeah, it was, it just meant that me and him stayed together. But I was still, essentially, in France.
When you say it meant that you and he stayed together, can you explain what you mean by that? Why did it mean that?
Well, because if he'd had said, no, I want you to stay, then we probably would have split up and I would have gone anyway. But because he said to go, then it meant that we didn't need to split up.
And what was the nature of your relationship at that point in time?
We were a couple, as far as I thought.
And as far as you were concerned, were you getting along well together?
Yeah, I don't ever remember not getting along with him. We never argued or anything. So yeah, it was just like an old married couple. Yeah. So we were just the same as we ever were, I guess.
And so the sort of, you described earlier perhaps not a great deal of intimacy. I don't mean physical intimacy, I mean emotional intimacy. Did that remain about the same?
Yes, yeah.
And so when you suggested that you might go to France, did you detect any emotional reaction from him? Any reluctance?
No.
Did that surprise you at all?
No, not really. I think, it just felt like a really sort of grown up and adult relationship where it's, we talk about things. There was no, it wasn't emotional at all. So no, that wasn't, I hadn't really known what to expect from a relationship. And I just thought that's kind of how it was.
And your evidence that had he said, no, don't go, you probably would have gone anyway and split up with him. Was that a reflection of how you felt about the relationship, or
I
more
think it's a
pragmatic?
reflection of how I felt about the job. Because I mean, it was a fantastic job offer, and so I don't know that sort of our relationship would have been enough to have stopped me doing that. But as it turned out, I didn't have to think about that. We came to that kind of we'll go for a year, and then if I'd loved the job and I wanted to stay, then I would have done. But I mean, we'd also said he was going to come over and see me, so it was, I would have holidays and that, but he was going to come over and see me. That had been the arrangement.
Right, so you were leaving on the assumption that you would see him during that year.
Yes.
Not that you would go a whole year without seeing each other.
Yeah. Oh no, because I wasn't entitled to a holiday in the first year, but I would be, and also it sort of I was allowed people to come and stay.
I think in the event, we'll come to it, but in the event he never did come to
No.
stay with you, did he? You say in your witness statement that it was the autumn of 1992 when you moved to France. Are you able to be any more precise as to the month?
Not to hand, no. I think I did look it up sort of back in 2017, but I can't remember now. I think it would have been August, maybe September.
Right, if we look, there's a report, MPS 0739788, B15, sir. And it's a report, Jessica, dated the 29th of September of 1992. We looked briefly at this before because of the date of birth being 1975. If we look at the content, please, down, thank you. It states Jessica has left the UK to work in a sanctuary for dogs and cats in the south of France.
Yeah.
So that suggests that by the 29th of September, you'd already left the UK. Does that sound
Yeah, that
accurate?
sounds about right, yes.
It also says at the end, the final sentence, Jessica is no longer taking part in ALF activity and she will be away for at least a year.
Yes.
So based on what you've told us, HN2 would have known that you would be away for at least a year because that's the nature of the discussion you had with him.
Yeah, that was at his. I don't know why the year was. I don't know why he suggested the year, but yeah, that would fit.
How widely known was it? Sorry, I'll start again. How widely known was it amongst your friends and acquaintances that your planned period of absence from the UK was about a year in the first instance?
I don't know that anybody else would have known. This was more a he and I conversation.
And other than what you've explained to us, that your thinking was that you might well extend that year out longer, did you discuss that possibility with anyone?
No.
Right, just whilst we're on the report, it suggests that you are no longer taking part in ALF activity, other than the Great Hookley Farm raid that we've already heard about. Was there any other activity that could be termed ALF activity that you had been involved in before you left for France?
No. I mean, maybe the chicken from Leyden Street. I don't know, but that would be all.
Thank you, we can take that down. Was there any sort of formal goodbye between you and HN2 before you left for France, or did you simply pack and leave with little ceremony?
I don't really remember. I think it was probably with little ceremony. I remember going from the East London address. I remember packing my stuff and going on my own to the airport from there.
So he wasn't present when you
No.
packed, and he wasn't present with you on the journey to
No.
the airport. Had you any conversation with him before you left about whether the relationship would be monogamous whilst long distance?
No.
What was your understanding?
That it would be. I wouldn't have been in a relationship had I thought it was any other way.
Did you have any conversation before you left about how you would keep in contact? So letters, telephone calls, anything like that?
Yes, yeah, that was exactly it, like phone calls and letters.
And do you remember any particular conversation about that, about how frequently you'd remain in touch?
Not really, no. No, it was a case of, I'll give you a call, and I'll write, and it was that. I don't remember any specific conversation.
I think in your witness statement you say that you would send him a letter around once a week. Is that about right?
I think so, yes. Yeah, I was quite homesick, so I wrote quite a lot of letters.
And not just to HN2?
No.
You describe the content of your letters as usually being simply chatty.
Yes.
And does it follow from that you didn't tend to include intimate, either emotional or physical sorts of details in your letters?
No, not at all. It was a bit I guess it's a bit like, it was quite boring and sort of inane. I would explain, I don't probably tell him about the dogs and cats, and that was it. Yeah, there wasn't, we weren't great, like, letter writers, didn't have much to say, really.
So if somebody picked it up, do you think they'd describe any of them as a love letter, or was it something less
at all.
less emotional than that?
Yeah.
Did he respond to you by letter as frequently as you wrote to him?
I would say probably like about the same. I think I remember having like a few letters sort of from him. But yeah, I remember I wrote a lot of letters, but I guess trying to work out how, who I sent them all to and stuff. I guess that he would have had one probably like once a week. But no, maybe I wrote more then. But then, I was living sort of like for the most part on my own over there, so I had a lot more time because I wasn't like out with, my friends. I'd like left all my friends at home, so yeah, I had more time to write letters.
So at the time, did the frequency with which he wrote to you strike you as surprising or unusual, or did it all seem quite normal and as expected?
No, as expected, really.
Did there ever come a time when either of you wrote a letter that was intimate in nature?
He did, yes.
Right. And can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was like a normal, just an ordinary letter, so it was sort of nothing, what he'd been doing or whatever. And it was one line at the bottom, and it was, I remember it because it was so like out of character and quite, it was a line about oral sex, and it was just odd. It wasn't, I do remember looking at it and thinking sort of like, I don't know, didn't really know. It's like, what's that supposed to, am I meant to think that's like sexy? Because it's not. And, it was weird. It wasn't like him. It was, I don't think, like, we'd never had any conversation or anything like that. So it was really out of place and really odd. And that's why I remember it.
Did you speak to him about it ever?
No.
Why not?
It's better just forget it. No, I don't really want to have that kind of conversation and that. But I just do remember it as being just out of character, I would say. There was nothing in any of the other letters that you wouldn't have thought we were just friends. So, yeah, this was odd. And it was, it was kind of like it wasn't, I don't think it was a PS, but it was like, like 2 lines sort of at the bottom. Yeah, it was strange.
How confident are you in recalling that letter?
100%.
Did you keep any of the letters that he sent you?
No, weirdly enough, that letter I'd kept because there's part of me thinking, have I missed the point of it? But I'd had that, but then because I'd had to go back and pick up all my stuff, a lot of my stuff I didn't get back. So my room and everything could be cleared, and that it wasn't in my stuff. It should have been just like with all my documents and stuff. There may have been a few other letters, but I didn't get any documents or anything back. So
it never returned from France?
no.
I think you also refer to speaking on the telephone with him whilst you were in
Yes.
France. How frequent was the telephone contact between you?
Probably less than the letters, I would think, because he had at the house. I know where he was. I don't know if I can say it, where he was living at the time.
Yes?
Yeah, he was in Stanthorpe Road in Streatham. And like at that place, there was like a communal phone in the hall, so I could ring like straight through to him. And there was another couple of guys that lived in the building. So, you know, sometimes I get to speak to him, other times he wouldn't be there, and they'd answer and leave a message. Probably it was easier for me, I think, to ring him, but you know, I guess probably it was more by letters.
And do you have an idea of the frequency with which you called him? Would it be every week or?
Maybe not. Maybe every couple of weeks or something. Because you know, I was ringing at this point. I think I was actually ringing, you know, my friends who we could have a conversation. You know, there wasn't enough conversation between me and him to like have a half an hour conversation. Whereas my friends, you know, it was just easier. So you know, I could be on the phone for a couple of hours to my friends.
Can you, do you have any idea how often when you called that communal phone, he would answer as opposed to somebody else? Was it more often than not him or more often than not somebody else?
It might have been more often than not someone else. Because, I mean, quite often they would get him, but it was, yeah, I don't think that he got to the phone before, like, other people a lot of the time. So, or they go and knock on the door. But I remember quite a few times there was other, like, I think it was 2 other guys that lived in the house.
You said before that before you went to France, you weren't generally going to his address. He was generally coming to the East London address.
Yeah.
So did you know the others in his house in Stanthorpe Road?
No, that was... No, so the first time that I went, that I would have actually gone to Stanthorpe Road, would have been in the December of '92.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that would have been the first time that... So, yeah, initially probably then I wouldn't have met these guys, but I know from the December that I knew there was 2 other guys that lived in the house because I had met them.
In what circumstances had you met them?
Just kind of going into his flat, because his flat was, like, at the back, and so there was, like, a corridor, and I think the phone was on the left-hand side. But, like, sometimes you would meet in the corridor.
And that had happened before you went to France?
No.
So that
was in the December. Yeah, I never went to his house. I didn't go to the one in Peckham. I think he lived in Peckham. I didn't ever go to that. But the one in Streatham, the first time I went was in the December.
And so when you're calling from France and somebody else is picking up the phone, they are strangers to you, effectively?
Yes, yeah.
So you weren't speaking to them, you were simply trying to find out if HN2 was there?
Yes, yeah.
And did he telephone you back on occasion?
Yes, I think he must have done. I don't know whether that was a dial-in and dial-out phone, or he would phone me from a phone box. I'm not sure.
But he would on occasion phone
Yes.
you whilst you were in France?
Yeah.
And can you give us any idea of the frequency with which he would telephone you?
It wouldn't be as frequently as I would phone him because it wasn't as easy.
And you've touched on this, but the nature of the telephone calls, the sorts of things you spoke about, was it similar to the letters you wrote each other or different in nature?
Yeah, it was similar. You know, there was no sort of there was certainly no, deep and meaningful, really conversations. Nothing like that. I think you'd be hard pressed to imagine that it was a couple speaking rather than a couple of friends. So neither of us, I don't think, were demonstrative in that sort of way.
But did you understand in the run-up to the December visit back that you remained in a relationship with him?
Yeah, absolutely.
And did he ever say anything to you or you to him to suggest otherwise?
No.
You say in your witness statement that in the lead up to Christmas, he started to complain about you being away. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I don't know whether it was in letter or in a phone call, but had said that, he suggested we should start seeing other people.
And do you remember sort of how he put that? Were those the sorts of words he used, or was
I
there
remember
a wider conversation?
I just remember like the phrase, should see other people. We should see other people.
And how did you feel about that?
I think I was livid.
And why were you livid?
Because you don't do that. You either with someone, you're with that person, or you split up and you're not with them and you go your own separate ways. But to suggest that we should still be in a relationship but see other people was, I was angry.
So you understood the suggestion not to be let's split up and see other people, but let's maintain this long distance relationship, but also to see other people. That's how
that was what I understood. I wonder if, maybe he didn't mean that, but that was what I understood. Otherwise, he would have suggested breaking up, I think. But that's certainly how I understood it.
Right, so he did not suggest breaking up?
No.
And did you express your feelings to him?
Yes.
In what way?
I expressed no, basically, and I wasn't very happy with that. And I think at that point, I finished with him, or I dumped him. I was like, just no, no way. And I think I probably swore at him and finished the relationship.
So you told him it's over at that point?
Yeah, I was like, I'm not, no, you don't do that. It was just such an awful suggestion that, I suppose that took me by surprise. I couldn't imagine that he would suggest that. So, it was, I was not happy.
You mentioned earlier a trip back to the UK in December. Could you tell us how that came about?
I felt, in the end, guilty because, it was like I was away, it wasn't fair on him, and just, I felt like I wasn't being fair. So at some point we had started speaking again, and I kind of felt like I'd not been fair to him. He sort of said to suggest that I went, and then anyway, the upshot of that was that I said, I will come back. I'll come back and visit, so it's... But I wasn't allowed, I hadn't been there for long enough to have time off, so I had to work all my days off to get a week off before Christmas to come back to see him.
So timing-wise, this is before Christmas 1992?
Yes, yeah.
And you've described having finished it with him as a result of the telephone call or the conversation about not having a monogamous relationship. When you came back in December, did you think you were in a relationship or not?
We were at that point. I think that was the coming back in December was it was kind of a concession to me being away. So we would then we were then back together, and I was I'll come back and see him, and that was so it wasn't like we'd have to split up, So I would come back and see him. I think I just thought I'd been a bit unfair to him.
And were you discussing this with him, so it was understood between the two of you that was the purpose, as it were, of your visit back?
Yes, yeah.
You came back then, I think, for a week.
Yes.
Is that right? You describe in your witness statement spending a few hours with your parents.
Yes.
When you arrived. I think they picked you up with a relative from the airport.
Yes.
And then going to his place in Stanthorpe Road in Streatham.
Yes.
How long did you stay? What proportion of your visit was spent staying with him thereafter?
All of it.
And how was your relationship with him during that week? It
was back to how it had been before he suggested we start seeing other people. So it was just back to the same.
Did you have any further conversation of the sort you'd had before about seeing other people?
No.
And when you said before that you felt that you might be being unfair to him, did you mean that you thought perhaps his suggestion that he should see other people was one that you should accede to, you should agree to? Or did you mean something else?
No, I think because it was sort of framed as like, well, I don't know, it sounds so just gross to say it, but it was like, but he's a man and it's not fair on him and he's at needs and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I kind of felt like that I've not been fair, I've maybe not taken that into account or whatever, I don't know, it's quite hideous to think about now, but that was, I felt I'd not been fair because, I just upped and left and, it wasn't fair to him.
Did he ever say anything that caused you to feel that, or was that a feeling that...
I think he had to have done, because I wouldn't have necessarily come to that conclusion on my own.
So you stay with him for pretty much all of that week?
Yes.
And were you also spending time with other people, or were you just as a couple?
I think we would have seen like some other friends, and that because the other house that was in Streatham, there was a few other people I knew in there, so I guess that we would have been socialising with other people. I mean, nobody that I can particularly remember, but I can't think that either one of us would have wanted to have been, stuck in like not seeing anyone else. I remember it was the December because I hadn't been to Streatham before, and I remember like both the Christmas decorations in Streatham. And yeah, it was somewhere I'd not sort of been before, and it was like Christmas sort of time. But yeah, so that's how I remember.
And just to clarify, you referred to another address. Is that the address that later became your South London address?
Yeah.
So by then you already knew of some people who lived at that address? When you were back during that visit for that week, did you engage with Andrew Coles in any activity that might be described as ALF-style activity?
No.
Any chicken farm raiding,
No.
anything of that nature?
No.
And after the December visit, you went back to France.
Yes.
And what, if anything, was discussed between you and HN2 about what would become of your relationship before you left to go back to France?
I think we just went back to sort of the long-distance relationship again.
And any conversation about whether that would be a monogamous relationship or not before you left?
No, not as far as I remember.
I'm going to ask that we put up on screen now 2 letters. They're heavily redacted and only parts of them have been gisted in. And I'm going to ask you some questions. Can we start with MPS 0735510, please? C3, sir. And could you just pause there? Just, as I say, they're heavily redacted because they're your personal letters from the time, but we see it's a letter from you from an address in France. And I think we see, those of us who've seen the unredacted versions, that you're writing to a friend. Is that right?
Yes.
And can you just describe the nature of your friendship with the person you wrote the letters to at the time?
Yeah, my best friend since we were like 3 years old.
And was this the friend you described earlier of being your best friend at school? Or somebody else?
No, this is somebody else.
So you'd been friends for a long time?
Yes.
By the time these letters were written. And how frequently were you writing to this individual whilst you were in France?
Probably more so than I did to HN2.
If we scroll down, please, to page 4, we'll see part of the letter that is remains unredacted. It's been typed back in.
I think those who are looking at the document should know the date. It's the 1st of November, 1992.
Thank you. So are you taking that from the index?
Yes.
I'll just clarify if I may, because that may be slightly misleading. The letter itself doesn't, I think, bear a date on its face, but the inquiry has a statement from the individual who you wrote this letter to, who told the police, to whom he handed a copy of the letter, that it was from November 1992.
Okay.
So the 1st of November may not be precise. It's given the 1st, but it's in
November
fact
1992.
November 1992. So this is before you came back for the Christmas visit on the face of it.
Yeah.
Or the pre-Christmas visit. Sorry, it's my mistake. All right, I'm just going to read it into the record. And then I will just ask you a couple of questions about it. All right. It says this: it's really weird, but I'm still going out with Andy. Yes, all these miles away. Strange. I might dump him when I see him next. Well, when I leave him next to come back here. Because I will need somewhere to stay when I go to London. Bitch, aren't I? I don't really want to see the house at, and that's your East London address. I will be really upset because people will be staying in my room, bastards. So I will need to stay somewhere. I will let you know when I will be coming back. That will be great. Sabbing, seeing privacy. Apparently it's easy to sab the union because the terrier boys aren't allowed to touch you. Right, so in November of 1992, when you wrote, it's really weird, but I'm still going out with Andy, to whom were you referring?
HN2.
And why were you writing to your friend that it was really weird that you were still going out with him?
Because I think we'd split up before that.
And is that what you referred to just a few moments ago?
Yes, yeah.
And so in what circumstances, having split up in the way you described, did you come to be going back out with him?
I guess because I felt like I was being like unkind. So we must have, I think, like Andy and I must have spoken sort of after that, because then I did think I'd been unfair. So then we got back together again. But yeah, I mean, I remember like when he told me, I got like really annoyed, and like sometimes I get like quite annoyed and like make sort of rash decisions and things, and I think I did then when I dumped him. And so yeah, this was afterwards, so we'd obviously worked it out somehow.
And then you say this: I might dump him when I see him next. Well, when I leave him next to come back here. So that suggests, doesn't it, that you already knew that you were going to go back to the UK for a trip?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yes.
But that you were contemplating that by the end of that trip, you might have dumped him?
I don't know. I think I was still not particularly like pleased with him, but I think I was just sort of saying to my friend, you know, it's like, well, I will dump him, you know, but I obviously need somewhere to stay first. It was like a joke sort of thing. But yeah, I was still annoyed, you know, that I was really, you know, I've forgotten how annoyed I was when he suggested that. So, yeah.
Right, so when you read this back,
yeah.
Jessica, aged 19, 20,
Yeah.
you see anger.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, yes. I mean, I have some anger issues anyway. But yeah, definitely I do.
All right.
Worse than the other letter.
All right. And we know from your evidence that, in fact, you did come back for the week in December. We've spoken about that. Can we take that letter down, please? And could we have up MPS 0735511, which is the second letter that your friend provided to the police? And likewise, it's heavily redacted, and some of it is written or typed back in. If we look at page 2, in terms of timing, so that you know, your friend told the police that this letter was from spring of 1993.
Okay.
So this much later.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think that's right.
All right, I was going to ask you.
Okay, yeah. No,
I was going to ask you, so when do you think this letter is likely to date from?
I think it must be before that, because where I say, like, I asked him how his Andy is, and I said, I don't have one anymore, he's really pissed me off. Sorry. But yeah, so but that's got to be before then, before then I made it up with him that the other letter says when I'm going back, I'll dump him because I need somewhere to stay. So I think this one predates it.
Was there any time between the December trip back to the UK and your eventual return to the UK in spring-summer 1993 when the two of you broke up?
No, not as far as I remember, no.
So as far as you recall, after you went back to France in December and until you came back to the UK in the summer, you remained in a relationship
Yes.
with HN2?
Yeah.
And that's why you think that this letter, which says you don't have an Andy anymore
Yes.
because he's pissed you off,
Yeah.
you think that must predate the December trip?
Yeah.
Is that your...
Because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. So yeah, I'm fairly sure.
So what we see here is you writing, it's the same friend, it's redacted. Well, no wonder you left it so long before you wrote. You'll have to go out and make some gossip, boy. Or you could just do what I do and lie. It makes great reading. Right, now taken literally, you understand that suggests that you were in the habit of telling lies.
Yeah, and I get that.
Can you explain when 19 or 20-year-old Jessica wrote that, what you were intending to convey?
I think it was because there just wasn't much happening. I was just like, just make something up, make it more interesting, like I do. It's just, I was an idiot. And it's like, it's mortifying. I would say it's absolutely mortifying to read this. But I think, yeah, I was quite full of it. But yeah, I mean, I didn't, there's no point. This was my best friend, he knew absolutely everything. So I didn't make stuff up. It's just I think I was trying to be funny and jokey and just look like a prat.
And so it may follow from what you said, but were you in the habit of telling lies?
No.
It goes on, well, how's your Andy? I think you explain in your witness statement that your friend and I think you were big fans of the band Erasure.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's a reference to a member of that band.
Yeah. It was Andy Bell. Because me and my friend, we used to go to Erasure gigs and, we were really big Erasure fans. So we kind of had a joke, well, you're going to have to be sort of the UK part of the, the Andy Bell fan club or whatever, and I'll be the French part and stuff. So yeah, that was kind of, my friend got what I meant. So
an in-joke between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you say, I don't have one anymore, presuming meaning an Andy.
Yeah.
And who is that a reference to?
HN2.
He has really pissed me off. In this letter he wrote to me, brackets, I've probably already told you this, close brackets, new bracket, I don't really care, here it is again, anyway, it's worth a few laughs, close bracket, he suggested that we see other people, because if I decided to stay over here for another year, it wouldn't be fair on him. So that's a similar expression of feelings from him as you've told us about before.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the same time, the same occasion?
Yes.
So there was only one occasion on which he said that to you?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And you say there it's worth a few laughs. What did you mean by that?
I think, I sound really bitter. That's how that's how I read it. I probably, I don't really care, here it is again, it's worth a few laughs. I was not, I can't believe how angry I was, sort of reading this I was really angry. It's hard to think that that prompted the amount of anger that I think I see here, because I don't feel that I felt, not looking back now, I don't imagine that my feelings were this strong, but obviously, they were. This really annoyed me.
All right. You go on in the letter to say this. Those weren't his exact words, but in a nutshell, he wouldn't be getting enough sex. Is that what HN2 communicated to you, that he wouldn't be getting enough sex and that's why you should see other people?
In a nutshell, yes, is exactly that.
And then it goes on, so if we both agreed to see other people, he wouldn't feel guilty.
Yeah, and I don't, this is not, like I say, it would never have been my thought that, this reasoning, I don't think I would have come up with it on my own, and then and him sort of then he wouldn't feel guilty, so yeah, I think he's obviously conveyed that to me.
And then you say this, so I wrote a letter back saying I'll see other people, e.g. Swedish sailors, but if you see any sluts, it's over. Did you write a letter back to him to that effect?
I don't know. I think or was it in the other letter? I honestly, I don't know.
You go on, then he rang me and said, what do I think we should do? So I said, let's call it quits. He said, okay. So that's roughly what you told us you remembered earlier of what happened before you went back for the December visit.
Yes, yeah. It was, yes. Yeah.
And then it goes on, I told him I'd ring him in a couple of weeks, but he said no, he'd write. That was over a month ago, so fuck him. It was getting on my nerves anyway, when blokes asked if I had a boyfriend. Was that the nature of the conversation, that you said, I'll ring you, and he said he'd write, but actually didn't?
Yeah, well, it must, yeah. Judging by this, it must be, yes.
And so when you came back to the UK in December, this had all already taken place?
Yes, yeah.
And just to finish off that letter, I'll just go back one sentence. It was getting on my nerves anyway when blokes asked if I had a boyfriend. Good old me, though, I never lied. I always said, yes, but I'll fuck you because he's in London. That's honest.
Yeah, apart from the last line. But no, what I meant is I said that. I remember saying, I think there was a couple of guys, and I remember saying, I've got a boyfriend in London. And it was sort of that, it felt sort of quite, being over there, I think it felt like it was, I've got a boyfriend in London. That I kind of, it was something sort of, worth having. But no, I didn't, I didn't. I remember I said to other people, it's no, I've got a boyfriend. And that's why I think I was, that sort of because he's in London, it was just, no, I'm still angry. I didn't see anybody else. I was faithful to him the entire time that I was with him. So, and that's not, I wouldn't have, it's just not me. But yeah, I'm angry.
So when you write there that you always said to men who asked you, yes, I have a boyfriend, but I'll fuck you because he's in London, are you saying that's not what you would say?
No, I would say I've got a boyfriend in London. The other part was just a an angry sort of comment, but it was a joke that my friend would have kind of gotten. Reading it now, yeah, it's horrific. But yeah, I was 19 and but I'm angry. But no, I always, I did at least two, I did tell at least two people that my boyfriend was in London. So, I didn't, that's, I never lied. I said, that comment is just stupid, but yeah, I never lied.
Thank you. We can take that letter down. You eventually returned to the UK. I think you say in your witness statement in May 1993, having been injured and spent some time in hospital in France. Is that right?
Yes.
And sorry, that's my mistake. You say you were injured in May 1993. You returned to the UK June or July 1993, having spent some time in hospital.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't hear the dates.
It's my mistake. Could I ask you just to have a look at a report dated the 2nd of June. It's MPS 0746548. So it'll be your B. So I'm just looking for assistance on this. B20, thank you. I'm grateful for the assistance. Jessica, so a report dated the 2nd of June 1993. The intelligence it contains has been attributed to HN2 by the inquiry. And it says this about you in the body of the report, that you were on extended leave from your job at the animal sanctuary in France as a result of an injury, and that you would be spending 7 weeks in the UK before returning to work, and would use the time to visit old friends in London and the South East. Your old car, the red Mini, was now unroadworthy and would probably be scrapped soon. So the suggestion there, as at the 2nd of June, is that you would spend 7 weeks in the UK and then return back to work in France. Was that the expectation when you first came back?
I don't know where the 7 weeks came from. I don't. I mean, I was on sick leave, but I don't know where. And I mean, unless I got a sick note for 7 weeks, but I don't know. I don't ever remember it being that precise as to how many weeks it was going to be for.
Were you discussing what was happening to you, your injury, your hospitalisation, and your return with HN2 at the time?
I would imagine so, yes.
And the accuracy of the suggestion that your red Mini was unroadworthy by the time you came back to the UK and would probably be scrapped soon, is that correct?
I think it had been scrapped already.
Before you came back?
Yes, yeah. If it wasn't, then it would have been at my parents' house, but to be scrapped. But I don't know why it would have been there for so long.
But in any event, at around this time, early June 1993, you did come back from France, is
Yes.
that right? And where did you stay when you came back from France?
I think I stayed between what I can remember, Andy's flat and my parents, and then possibly some time in the other house in the South London address, but because I had friends in that house. But I don't know how, I can't say like how long or who, but it would be between sort of like those, particularly between Andy's and my mum and dad's.
And that's his address in Streatham, the Stanthorpe Road
Yes.
address. And the South London address that you later moved into was quite close by to his address, wasn't
Yes.
it? You've described earlier about possibly passing the other residents of his address in a hallway. What was his room like in the Streatham address?
It was quite boring. There didn't seem to be, there was nothing homely or like personal. It was a bit of a sort of like a shell, really. It was, he'd got, there were like patio doors that went out into the garden, and so he was doing, I think he cut back the garden. I think it was quite wild sort of when he moved in, and there was a train track at the bottom. Other than that, there was nothing. It was kind of like just a bit of an empty box, really, his place.
When you came back from France that summer and stayed there, did you understand that you were still in a relationship with him?
Yes, yeah.
And what did you base that on? Had you discussed what you were going to do when you came back, or was it taken as for granted? What was the situation?
it was taken for granted because we were still together when I went over there. Once we'd sort of got back together and I'd been like home in December, then we were just back together again.
And any more discussion when you came back about monogamy or the status of your relationship in any way?
No, I don't think so. We just kind of seemed to go like back into the same sort of like old married person's relationship.
So spending time, sometimes together, sometimes with other people. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
And for how much longer, roughly, did your relationship with HN2 last after you returned to the UK?
I don't remember. Maybe a couple of months. I can't be exact, but something around that.
You describe in your witness statement that you were eventually let go from your job in France in
Yes.
August of 1993.
Yes.
Were you still, as far as you were concerned, in a relationship with HN2 when that happened?
I don't know. Possibly not. But only because I don't think it was longer than like a couple of months, and that would make that a couple of months. So no, I don't think we would have been.
Could you describe how the relationship with HN2 came to an end?
Yes. We knew like the people in this other my South London address, and so we would see them, and there was another, I think, there was somebody else. I met someone else basically, and just because then I realised that I was looking forward to seeing somebody, and actually sort of like felt there was some sort of chemistry, there was some kind of spark, and it just like after all that time with Andy, it felt so completely different that I think it highlighted just what Andy and I didn't have. So yeah, I told him, I said it's not right. I told him that I liked someone else. I think I told him who, and I just said it's made me realise that there's nothing, it's not right between us, and yeah, I mean he just completely agreed, and that was it.
So amicable?
Yeah, very much so. It just felt like, well, that's obviously because grown-ups and stuff, and we were so grown up about it, and now looking back, but at the time, it just seemed that was sort of like that was a very grown-up way of doing things, and it was all okay. And eventually I did start seeing this other guy, and like Andy still used to come round, so he used to spend a lot of time at our house with us as well, and everything was fine. So,
were you surprised by his reaction that it was all amicable and straightforward?
No, I don't think so, because he wasn't really like a particularly emotional or like demonstrative sort of person. So, it seemed completely within his character that he just. And mine as well. It was like there was no sort of like tears and recriminations. It just, we both understood that was how it was.
Just want to explore a little bit some of the things you've said about the South London address and how you met your next partner. I'll refer to him in that way. Was he at the time when you met him already living at what would become your South London address?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Did you meet him at that address or somewhere else?
No, I met him at Andy's.
And what do you remember about the circumstances in which you met him?
I remember Andy and I, we were either like because he'd got a pull-out sofa in his flat, and I think we were in bed, and the front doorbell went. So it was kind of like having to like get up quickly, get dressed, and like, it was a little bit kind of awkward. We weren't expecting anybody, and then that's when this guy and Andrea came round.
And that's Andrea McGann?
Yes.
And did you know Andrea McGann at that point? You did. And did you know the man who would become your partner at that point?
I didn't. That was the first time I met him.
And so it was at HN2's address in Stanthorpe Road where you first met him?
Yes.
Were you aware whether Andrea McGann lived at what would become your South London address at the time?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if she did. I think she did. I think she lived there before I did, yes.
And there came a time then when you moved into that South London address?
Yes.
And was that essentially because you had struck up a new relationship with your new partner who lived there?
I'm not
Or was
sure.
it independent from him?
I'm not sure. It may have been. It may not. I can't remember. It depends whether I was in like that room, because I think at one point like everyone moved into like each different room around the house. So I initially think that it was because we were together. But then if I'd been in that room first, then I would have been on my own. But you know, like Andy and I spent a lot of time in that house, so we would have stayed over in that house before I moved in. So I'm not entirely sure.
I'm going to come on in a moment a bit more about the setup of that house.
Yes.
Before I do, did you understand HN2 already had a pre-existing relationship with at least one person who lived in the South London address by the time you got back from France? By relationship, I just mean a friendship, some sort of
Yes, yeah, I knew.
acquaintance.
Yeah, he knew Andrea.
Andrea McGann.
Yes.
So you understood he had a pre-existing connection to the South London address through Andrea McGann.
Yes.
And what did you understand about his relationship, in a neutral sense, with Andrea McGann at that stage? Were they friends? Were they acquaintances? Were they best buddies?
I mean, acquaintances as far as I knew. And I guess he must have known the guy as well. And also there was another woman lived in that address as well, and I knew he knew her. So I think he was familiar with the house and everybody that was in it.
And the house itself was a house, again, in multi-occupancy. So
Yes.
in people in rooms, in different bedrooms within the house.
Yes.
How many bedrooms did it have?
Like what? Right, one downstairs and then 2, 3 upstairs.
And you moved into which bedroom?
I think
Upstairs or downstairs?
the back. The back upstairs room, I think.
And do you remember who occupied the other upstairs rooms when you moved in?
I think Andrea was down. Andrea was downstairs, I think, in the front room, but then at some point, then she moved up to the front bedroom, the big front bedroom.
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, it was. I think it was like everybody was in every room. Like in the end, I ended up like having 3 different rooms in that house, so it's kind of confusing to know.
Can I ask, if you look at your cipher list, have you got that in
Yes.
front of you?
Yeah.
Did the individual the inquiry is calling EAB live in that address at the same time as you?
Yes.
And was she there when you arrived, or did she come after you, to your recollection?
I think she was there when I arrived.
When you moved to the South London address, was your relationship with HN2 ongoing, or had it finished?
It would have been. We would have visited it. Certainly, we would have visited it when we were together. I'm not sure about the moving in thing. I can't 100% say. But you know, we certainly would have been. We would have spent quite a bit of time there together, because from the time that I split up with him, you know, I would have got to have known the other guy. You know, it wasn't a quick thing. So, you know, so we did spend time there, and obviously they, you know, like, I mean, Andrea and him came to Andy's, so we spent a lot of time together. But I think I can't remember everyone. It was a bit mad. There were so many sort of like different people. One person would move out, and then like there'd be sort of like a scrap for their room, and someone else would move in, because some of the rooms were a lot better than the others.
When you've described sometimes staying over at that
Yes.
address with Andy, with HN2,
Yes,
is that right?
yeah.
And why would you do that when his address was just down the road?
So I think it's sort of like if you're staying up late and like, you know, and having a drink and just, it was what you did. And, you know, I mean, he was quite right as well about saying, you know, like quite often you stay over at different activists' house and, you know, so we would have done. Yeah, we would have stayed over
And
there.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I was saying we would have stayed over at that house, you know. And if I did live in there whilst I was still going out with him, then he would have stayed over. But you know, I honestly can't say 100%.
So no clear memory about whether he stayed over there whilst you were still a couple, and you were resident at the address.
No clear, like absolute memory. But you know, yeah, it's likely because where my mum and dad's were, you know, it was a pain to get to there. So I wanted to be in London with my friends. So I would have wanted to be there as soon as, you know, as quick as possible. So yeah, but I can't say 100%.
And when you stayed over at the South London address, so before you moved in,
Yeah,
but you stayed over there with Andy, with HN2, as a couple,
yeah.
where in the house did you stay? Have a bedroom or somewhere else?
We would have said we could have been in any of them because if there was nobody in the front bedroom and the bed was free, you know, then we would have stayed in there. Or the back bedroom, you know, it would have depended who was in. You know, there was no, you know, everyone was fine with people staying. We trusted everybody that was there, so no one had any problems. You know, if I was away and somebody else came to stay, then, you know, it was taken as read, you know, they can have my room. That was fine.
Do you recall ever having a conversation with EAB, who lived at that address, about your relationship with HN2?
Not a specific one, but I mean, we got on very well. So, you know, we used to spend a lot of time and had loads of conversations with her, but I don't remember a specific one.
She has given a witness statement to the inquiry. She also gave one to the police investigation that followed from your complaint regarding HN2. And she suggested that you told her at some point that you weren't keen to continue the relationship with him. Do you recall having a conversation of that nature?
I don't recall it, no.
Do you recall ever being in the South London address whilst you were still in a relationship with HN2 and EAB being around?
I mean, it's more than, it would have been more than likely, you know, because we did, you know, we were in the same groups as well, so like London Boots Action Group and that as well, so yeah, that would have been more than likely.
Could I ask you a couple of questions about Andrea McGann?
Yes.
You say in your witness statement that whilst you were living at the South London address, I think with Andrea McGann at the same time, she reported something to you about HN2's behaviour whilst you had been in France.
Yes.
Could you tell us what she told you?
Yes. I remember where we were as well when she said, this was when she was in the front downstairs like bedroom and we were talking. I mean, she and I were really good friends, and I remember she said in that way of sort of that kind of, oh, you know, she was like broad Bolton accent, and I remember her being kind of, you know, oh my God, you know, did I tell you about Andy? And she was saying that he'd tried it on with her, and I remember sort of, I guess I realised that she didn't know that like he and I like had been together. I wasn't with him at the time, and she said that she'd been, I think she was upset about something, or you know, he was trying to like, you know, to be sort of like comforting or something, and then like he went in for the kiss, and she was, you know, she had a brilliant turn of phrase, you know, sort of like, and she was just like, oh, and I told him this, and you know, was really sort of like it was quite funny the way that she sort of said it, and you know, was kind of like she told him in no uncertain terms, like no, And I asked her, I sort of said, I didn't say anything about like being together, but I said, when would that have been? And so she sort of worked it out. And I said, I was like, oh right, so when I was in, like, when he and I were together then, but when I was in France. And she was, bless her, she was so mortified, I didn't, so it doesn't, it doesn't matter. I was like, I don't care, I think I was with like my other partner at that point, but she was mortified, but I didn't, that was, it sort of, it was, I didn't know up until then, that he was actively like trying it on with other people when I was away, but I think that was the point when we were still in the relationship. So, she was more mortified about it than I was.
So how did you feel about learning that he'd tried it on with someone else whilst you were away?
I think I was just like, kind of like, oh, it's just gross, but whatever. I didn't care at that point. I was actually in like what I then thought was like a proper. It was so different, the relationship then that I was in. It was just showed me, whatever like Andy and I had was, it was, it was not, it was nothing, and I wasn't, so I wasn't. It didn't upset me. I didn't sort of care. But there's part of me was like, okay, now we know. But I mean, I didn't care.
And so Andrew McGann being mortified was as the result of realising that you had been in a relationship with him.
Yes, yeah.
At the time that this happened.
Yeah.
Could I ask you this? I think Andrew McGann has since died. Is that right?
Yes.
And when you were being interviewed by the police and you referred to somebody who was terminally ill and didn't want to come forward, was that a reference?
It was, yeah.
So the account that you gave to the police about something similar happening to a woman, that was an account, you didn't name her at the time, but that was an account about Andrew McGann.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I just mention as well, she's also referred to in the Powerbase article where she's actually named as Emily. So I think it actually, there is an incident that it's the same. I think it's the same incident, and there's another one in there that she told to Donal O'Driscoll.
So you understand that she's been given effectively a cipher in that.
Yes.
And it says Emily, but it means Andrew McGann.
Yes.
Thank you. Could I ask you a little bit more just about Andrew McGann briefly? Could you give us a physical description of what she looked like in around 1993?
Yes, she was a bit taller than me. She was quite a bit heavier, I'd say, than me. She always had like sort of like red kind of hennaed hair, and like I say, proper broad Bolton accent.
Was she older than you?
I think a few years. I think. Yeah, I know she definitely was older than me, but yeah, I think just a few years.
Did you ever become aware of her staying at HN2's Streatham address in Stanthorpe Road?
Not until like 2000. Not until like after I found out about HN2.
So at the time, no awareness.
No.
What have you since found out, and through which means?
It was through Donal, because after I'd found out, I think I was the last person, when all this kind of happened, I think I was the last person to be found, to be contacted when they knew, when HN2 had been like exposed. I think I was the last person that anybody had managed to find. I think the Powerbase article was already, it was already on there about it. And I think Donal had said, that's the first time that I really sort of realised like the creepy lech sort of part, and how many other people had said things. I was completely oblivious to that, I think, beforehand.
I just want to concentrate, what specifically, if anything, no, don't be sorry, what specifically, if anything, did you learn about the relationship, I use that in a neutral sense, the relationship between Andrew McGann and HN2 that you hadn't known before?
About when she stayed over at his flat, when I think the night before she went up north, and he was sort of like being quite sexually sort of pushy with her. I didn't know about that.
So you learnt that not directly from her, but through someone else,
Yes.
through Donald O'Driscoll later on. Did you understand that to have involved her staying in his bed, in the same bed?
Yes.
And for one night, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So I'm just, we could either take the break, we don't have to take the break, but we need to come off of the YouTube stream for the next short section of my questioning. It can be done without a break, or given the time, we could take a short break now. Okay, I'm told that it's better to turn it off. I'll ask the short questions and then take the break before it's switched back on.
Yes, of course.
Sorry. I'll wait for confirmation that the stream has been taken down, which should come from the back of the room.
We're now back on stream, so usual rules apply.
Yes, thank you. And Jessica, now that we are back on screen, just to summarise, I'm not going to use any names, but the evidence that you gave when the stream went off was to the effect that contemporaneously, so in the early 90s, you heard from one woman that HN2 had attempted to kiss her, and subsequent to you finding out about HN2 being an undercover officer, 2 other women had told you of similar instances with him, and that comes from a Power Base in part, sorry, not comes from, but is reflected in a Power Base article, and the reference for that, I'll just give it for the record, is UCPI 034357, so that is on the record.
Yes.
I'm going to just ask you now some questions about some specific details that you've given in relation to HN2 and your relationship with him before we move to look at some of the reporting on you by him. All right. You say in your witness statement that you never met any of his family. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And did he tell you anything about his family?
Not that I actually remember.
And I think you've said already today and in your witness statement that you were relatively incurious about him.
Yeah.
So not something you asked about or...
Not that I remember asking about. Let's say I think I wasn't, as girlfriends go, I don't think I was a very good one.
In terms of what you thought he did for work, can you tell us what you understood?
Yeah, he was a man with a van. So used to advertise in newsagent shop windows and would sort of do removals and that for people. That was what he told me he did.
And there were times, I think you say in your witness statement, when he would go away out of London as far as you were concerned. And did you understand that was linked to his job?
Yeah, I think so. I don't ever remember it being sort of for a family thing or anything like that. You know, if there were times when he wasn't available, I thought it was just work.
I want to ask you some questions. It's to do with the sexual relationship that you had with him. You say in your witness statement that he always used condoms.
Yes.
Did you ever have a conversation at the outset about that? Do you recall?
I don't recall. Not at the beginning, no.
Did you ever have a conversation in particular about whether or not it was acceptable to use a condom that was not vegan?
No, I didn't ever. I remember that back in the day there was condoms weren't vegan, but I don't remember knowing that when I was with him because he always used one. So I think that was something then that was either that I knew later or that came out later, but not. I didn't know at the time because he always used one and there was never an issue.
So you know that he suggested in his witness statement that there was some discussion between you about him not being willing to use a condom unless it was a vegan one.
Yes, yeah.
And what do you say about whether that conversation happened?
We had a conversation about condoms, but that's not the context of it at all.
Right. Can you tell us about the conversation you did have about condoms?
Yeah. It was... I think it was after we had sex, and from a sexual relationship, I didn't quite know what my expectations were, but I don't know. I think I just imagined that it would be different, and so I think I wondered whether it wasn't as good because maybe he was wearing condoms. I didn't know, but I suggested to him one time that he didn't maybe need to wear one. I mean, I have no idea what I was or wasn't thinking, but that's what I suggested.
And how did he react to that suggestion?
He said he had to because he'd already had one child, and so he would always wear one. He didn't want any more children. Well, he didn't want another accident.
Is that how he described it to you, or is that how you understood it?
That's how I understood it, but it was sort of, he didn't want it to happen again. I don't think he used the word accident, but, he didn't want it to happen again.
When he told you that, Was that the first time you heard from him that he already had a child?
Yes.
And how did you react?
I was a bit annoyed because that's something that's not something you wait until you're in a relationship with someone to tell them. That's something that you would or should say beforehand. So I was quite surprised and quite taken aback and a bit annoyed. But and then he went on sort of to say, but he doesn't see her, and that the woman that he had the relationship, it wasn't like a proper relationship, and so they weren't together. But then he wasn't allowed to see his daughter. She wouldn't let him see her.
Did he tell you anything about the age of the daughter?
Yeah, he said she was 2.5.
And how confident are you that that was the age he gave you?
I'm confident, or two or 2.5, but yeah, definitely within the 2-year range.
Is it possible that he gave you an older age and you misremembered?
No.
Did he give you a name?
Sophie.
And again, how confident are you in remembering that name?
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's a conversation that I distinctly remember because it was because of the way that it sort of happened, and it was a big thing. You shouldn't, because obviously we've been together for quite a while at that point, and this is the first that I've heard of it. So yeah, I was a bit shocked, and then when he said, because he did say, he wasn't allowed to see her, and then I do remember sort of like feeling a bit relieved because, I didn't want to be like any sort of step mum-ish person to a small child. It's like that wasn't really, it was too much. And so, then when he said like he wasn't allowed to see her, I was sort of like, oh, thank God for that. And then just like not long after that, that was a horrible thing to think. It's like if he wanted to see her, and I thought that was good that he didn't, I just felt really awful. So I remember it was such a quick, the feelings that I had just went sort of so quickly, and then I felt really awful because it's like if he wanted to see her and he wasn't allowed, then that's nothing that I should be pleased about. It's sad. But yeah, I definitely remember. And I remember him saying that was her name and her age.
Did you express any of the feelings that you've just expressed now to him at the time?
No. And the way, I remember where I was still in like bed, in the pull-out bed in his flat. And he was like towards the end of the bed, but there was the patio doors, and he was either turned away or like the sun was behind him, because I couldn't see his face, but also he couldn't see my face, and I think I must have looked like really shocked and that, and then because at the same time I just had this horrible, things are not funny, but you find things funny, and it's like really inappropriate, and I suddenly had like in my mind I could see him like holding the hands of a little child, but the child also like had a beard, glasses, and a beanie, and it was like a tiny little him, and it wasn't funny, and I had to really like be careful not to look like I'm thinking, like I burst out laughing, but it was just one of those things I couldn't, like, I just saw it, and yeah, so no, I remember because there was an awful lot of like emotions went through my head then, so I remember it.
You've described where you were, so that's Stanthorpe Road you're describing.
Yes.
Do you know when that conversation happened? Your evidence so far is that you didn't go to that address before the December 1992 trip home.
Yeah, I think it was after that, because although the sun shines in like December, but it was bright outside, so whether it was sort of like warm, but that could be. It would have been either the week in December, I don't think it was, or after when I came back from France.
Okay, so that would be June-ish onwards from 1993.
Yes.
Did you ever introduce him to your parents as your boyfriend or partner or anything of that nature?
He met my parents, but I would never have introduced him as my boyfriend.
Can I ask why not?
I wouldn't have introduced anyone to my parents as my boyfriend. It's sort of awkward.
Did you talk to them about personal relationships
No.
or sexual relationships? You mention in your witness statement you think there was an occasion when he offered to drive you home to collect some things to take to the East London address.
Yes.
And is it possible that he might have met your parents on that occasion?
Yes.
You are aware, I think, that in his witness statement, it's paragraph 278, he describes an occasion of towing your car to your parents' address from a Huntsab where it had some sort of problem or broken down, and that you asked if he wanted to stay over at the address. What would you have to say about that?
No, that's not. That's not true. He towed my car back from Brixton, where I'd lent it. I was in France at the time, and I'd lent it to one of my housemates, and it had broken down, and he towed it back with EAB, and had towed it back to my parents. But I was in France at the time, because otherwise, if I'd been there, I would have been with him, but I wasn't, because I wasn't in the country. It only ever broke down once on a SAB, and that was because the hunt did something to the distributor cap or something or other. They did something to it, but then that was fixed. It wasn't towed home even then, but it never broke down on a SAB. So he did tow my car back, but I wasn't there. And
how did you learn of it if you weren't there?
I was in touch with him when I was in France, so I knew that was gonna happen.
Through him?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, just bear with me a moment. All right, thank you. I want to move on to ask you some questions about some individual reports that contain intelligence that the inquiry has attributed to HN2, that you will have seen when preparing your witness statement. The first I want to ask you about concerns the Horse and Hounds ball in 1992. It's MPS 0730957, and it's dated the 11th of March of 1992. And to be clear, you are not named in this report, but I think you did attend this event, is that right?
Yeah.
It's B1, sir, in your bundle. And because it's relevant to what comes next, I want to just read through this report with you, please, Jessica.
Yes.
So it reports on what's suggested the organisation involved is Hunt Saboteurs Association at the Grosvenor House Hotel in Park Lane, London, W1, on the 5th of March 1992 at 1900 hours, so 7 p.m. And the nature of the event is described as a demonstration against the Horse and Hounds ball. Now, you attended this. Can I ask you, the Horse and Hounds ball, was that an annual event attended by people associated with hunting?
Yes.
And so the demonstration was an anti-hunting demonstration, is that a fair description?
Yeah, it was. It was nothing to do with the Hunt Saboteurs Association, though.
How did it come to be organised, as far as you were concerned?
It would have been. It could possibly have been like just a London animal rights thing. There's probably only about 20 organisations that would have known about it. So, and then word of mouth. But it was not Hunt Saboteurs Association. They didn't organise things like that.
The numbers attending in this document are recorded as 80 to 100. Is that consistent with your recollection of the numbers present?
No.
Greater or lesser number?
it was, as far as I can remember, it was about 20 to 30 people.
And next to the subheading disorder occurred, 14 arrests are recorded. Do you recall that many arrests?
I remember about 5, I think, but I don't know, because of the way that I was arrested. I didn't see what was happening or anything. So I don't know. It's just that I know because I appeared in court with some of the people afterwards, but I didn't see what happened.
I'll just read in what it says in the substance of the report about the event, starting at the bottom of that page. So it says this: the demonstrators assembled outside the front and rear entrances of the hotel from 1900 hours and kept up a noisy and aggressive protest. Do you agree that the protest was noisy and aggressive?
I would say it's noisy, but I mean aggressive. That's what, if you're shouting, it was people. It was noisy, I don't know that you would say it's aggressive unless people are aggressively noisy. No, I wouldn't say aggressive. They were shouting.
I keep reading. As their numbers grew, the protests became more vociferous, and at about 20:30 hours, so 8:30 p.m, a small group of protesters attempted to move to another entrance to the hotel. This action prompted a firm response by uniform officers who forced the group back into the fenced-off area set aside for the demonstration, and one of the group was arrested. Do you recall events unfolding in that way?
No, I don't.
It says at this point, the mood of the demonstrators changed, and one of their number threw a bag of flour at 2 stretched limousines which had pulled up outside the hotel. Do you recall the mood of the demonstrators changing around about the time that limousines pulled up?
No, I don't. And I don't, from where I was, I don't know if people went to go to another entrance. I don't know. I was sort of fairly in the middle. So I don't know if they could have gone. I don't know. They could have gone on to go to another entrance. But as far as I know, or as far as I remember, there was one entrance that people were using. So, but no, I don't. It didn't. They were shouting. I remember that. So no, I didn't feel that there was anything changed particularly.
Were you in what's described here as a fenced-off area,
Yes.
cordoned-off area?
Yes.
And were there people all around you?
Yes.
Were you packed in quite tightly or not?
Yes.
And could you see through, you've described being in the middle, could you see through or past the people around you?
No, I'm reasonably short, and I couldn't see. I see everybody's backs, but I couldn't see over. I mean, at one point I was on tiptoes because, there was a bag of flour thrown over, and so I was trying to see what they were throwing it at because I couldn't see. So I was on my tiptoes, sort of trying to look over. But yeah, no, I couldn't see. I didn't see, when he says, I think the car or something, there was no way I could have seen that at all. It would have been over in that sort of direction, but there was just people, all around.
So how did you become aware that a bag of flour had been thrown?
I saw it go over.
And had you anticipated that might happen?
Yeah, it sometimes did. So yeah, it wasn't a complete shock.
The report goes on, a few minutes later, another bag was thrown, and officers who had seen the culprit moved in to make an arrest. Do you recall a second bag of flour being thrown?
Not really, but I don't. Yeah, probably it, or maybe I don't remember. But yeah, that might be right.
The report goes on, some of the protesters attempted to shield the perpetrator, and in the ensuing scuffle, a number of activists, including Andrea McGann and Privacy, were arrested. It follows from the redaction just saying Privacy that that's not your name, because
No.
it would say Jessica if it had been. So it's suggesting that protesters, first of all, attempted to shield the person the police were attempting to arrest. Do you recall that happening?
Not exactly like that. I saw, maybe, I don't know if it was the second bag of flour. I saw who threw one bag of flour. if there was two, or I saw the person throw the first bag of flour. But what happened then, because I was like leaning, trying to see and stuff, just at that kind of time, the crowd had parted and there was a cop there, and like he saw me looking, and it was like, that was it. He pointed at me, and it's like, right, you. And like, I think the trying to shield one, I think that was actually people saying to me, like, they pushed me down. So, I mean, I was lucky I didn't get trampled, but they just like, get down, and pushed me down. I think that's what this is referring to. I don't remember anything. I don't remember Andrea getting arrested or privacy. I don't remember that, but I think the person that they're referring to here about trying to shield, I think that was when people pushed me to the floor. I think that's right.
And you were arrested at this event, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, yes.
And you were later, we'll come back to it, you were charged with offences arising out of it, but
Yes.
later acquitted on appeal.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that. Can we just take that report down and just look very briefly at another document written much later, MPS 0747452. This is dated from August of 2002. Can we zoom in to the main body of the text? And this is understood by the inquiry to be a letter or a note written in 2002 by Andrew Coles, HN2, looking back, as it were, at the events of the 5th of March of 1992. The second main paragraph refers to approximately 30 to 40 activists attending a loud and animated protest. Is that closer to how you remember it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And it refers a bit further on to a white stretched limousine pulling up at the ballroom entrance and two expensively dressed women getting out of the car. And then two flower bombs being thrown at two women. Does that ring any bells with you?
No, I didn't see, just from where I was, I didn't see anybody. I never saw anyone coming in. I couldn't see, like, above people's shoulders.
The letter, I won't read it all in, but it goes on to describe Andrew Coles receiving a blow to his head, which turned out, he says here, to have been from the battery end of a police radio. Do you recall him being injured at this event?
I don't.
Do you
I
recall?
don't remember him being there, to be honest.
Could I ask you, we can take that letter down now, about the circumstances of your arrest. So you've described, you remember some people shielding you. What do you remember happening to you next?
I'd been pushed, like the railings that they had were the sort of like half height metal ones, and someone pulled me up, because at this point I was still like, I was trying to stand up because I was on like my hands and knees, and somebody pulled me up, so my back was to the railings, and pulled me over, so I got to like a balancing point, and then as I went over on my head, so he let me go he pulled me over and then let me go, so I'd fallen on the floor, and the next thing was he'd put my left arm up behind my back, but had done it so much that I was on tiptoes. This is why I didn't see where I'd gone, because as he pushed my arm up so much, and my head was back, I never saw where I went. I didn't see what vehicle I got into. I don't remember anything, like, apart from that. You know, it was like I thought he'd broken my arm at this point, and so I didn't know who I was arrested with or anything. I don't remember anything sort of after that, just the pain in my arm, and then being at the police station, or being in a cell.
And I think you took yourself to accident and emergency after you'd been released from police custody, and you had torn ligaments in your shoulder, elbow, and wrist. Is that
Yeah,
right?
but I thought he broke my arm, so I asked to see a police surgeon when I was in, I think it was West End Central Police Station, because I was really sure that like he'd broken my arm. And yeah, they got somebody that the guy that came out to see me came out in his evening suit. He'd been at the ball, and came out and sort of, you know, I was the demonstration, you know, you were demonstrating, I was having my, you know, I was at the ball and stuff, and it was like 2 paracetamol, didn't examine me, didn't like touch me, and then left. So when eventually I got home, I had to drive myself. I had to trying to change gear with my right hand because I couldn't move my left arm. And I took myself to A&E, and I got the torn ligaments in my shoulder, my elbow, and my wrist, and I think he broke my collarbone.
The charges that you faced included assaulting a police officer, is that right?
Yes.
And you say in your witness statement that what you remember of the allegation specifically was that it was said you'd punched a police officer with your right hand over your left shoulder.
Yes.
And you were also charged with the fray.
Yes.
And you denied that before the magistrate's court. You pleaded not guilty.
Yes. Yeah. It's physically impossible.
And you were convicted before the magistrate's court, but given a conditional discharge. Is that right?
Yes.
So, in fact, the effect of the sentence that you were given by the magistrate's court was that if you didn't get into any more trouble, it would essentially go away.
Yes.
But you nonetheless appealed your conviction. Is that right?
Yeah, I was angry. It's the first time that I'd been in court and the police officer had lied and his friend had lied, and they, you know, it's exactly the same thing, and I was so angry. You know, even though I think my solicitor was like, you know, that's really sort of, you know, that's good, because they told me I had to expect a custodial sentence, and I didn't, and so they thought, you know, that was sort of like, suck it up, that's, you know, that's quite good, but I couldn't quite get my head around it, you know, but he lied, you know, I was incredulous. And I was angry as well, and I couldn't get over that. It's like, but he lied, you know, it wasn't a mistake, he wasn't mistaken, it was properly, he lied. And so I was like, I'm not doing it. So yeah, I appealed.
And on that appeal, you were found not guilty?
Yes.
Can we look at the reporting that Andrew Coles did around this time? So MPS 0740294, first of all, please. It's a report of the 25th of March of 1992. B2, sir, in your bundle. And this is a report about you, Jessica. And if we look at the substance at the bottom, please. It describes you as an active hunt saboteur and member of the London Boots Action Group. She is currently on bail for assault on police and a fray during the recent Horse and Hounds ball at the Grosvenor House Hotel. She is due to appear at a magistrate's court in connection with these charges, where she is expected to plead not guilty. That is all accurate information, as I understand it, based on your evidence. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah.
And how would HN2 have come to know that you were expected to plead not guilty when you appeared in court?
I think, actually, I was so angry, I think I would have told anybody. I was not, you know, I went on a bit about it, because I was so, like, angry about it. So I think I would have told anyone that listened.
Did he ever come, for example, to any consultations with you with a lawyer or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay, can we take that down, please, and look at a later report, MPS 0742251 B7, sir. It's a report of the 5th of May, so about 6 weeks on from the last one. And it's described as a planning meeting under the heading Nature of Event, with 10 attending. And then can we look, please, at the substance of what was reported? It reads in this way: animal rights activists from London and Surrey held this meeting at the home of Privacy's parents to prepare the defence of Privacy and Jessica for their forthcoming trial to be held at a magistrate's court on charges relating to the anti-hunt demonstration outside the Horse and Hounds ball at Grosvenor House Hotel in March 1992. And then it says, of those present, a number of people, including you, stated their intention to give evidence for the defence. Firstly, do you remember a meeting matching this description?
Yes, yeah, I do.
And what was the purpose of the meeting as far as you were concerned?
I think it might well have been me that asked for the meeting, because I didn't know like where I'd been taken. I knew where I'd gone over the fence, but I don't remember. Like, didn't know where the police van was. I didn't know where they'd taken me. I had no memory of what happened after that. So it was to do with that. It was not in the way that he said. But I didn't. Because I think at the point they recreated like the barrier with chairs to go, like, you went here, and then, because apparently they'd taken me right across in front of people coming in, which I just don't remember, but they showed me like where they'd taken me and where the police vans were, but it wasn't to like, that's just ridiculous to say that it was like it was a planning meeting. It wasn't.
In terms of what you had been doing before your arrest, were you able to remember that by yourself?
Yes, yeah. It was the part that I don't remember. It was the pain. It was as soon as that happened, I wasn't aware of anything else. All I can remember was walking on tiptoes. That's all that I can remember. So I didn't know where I'd gone or anything. But yeah, before that, we were sort of. I think we were probably shouting like some anti-hunt sort of things. I remember the flower bomb. Bag of flour going over, and I remember who threw it, and then I remember going, like, crawling about on my hands and knees, going up and over the bars, and then that is all I then remember is just the pain.
So in terms of preparing your defence to charges of a fray, which would have been the disorder and the throwing of the flower bomb, presumably, and assaulting a police officer, did you need any of these people to help you to know what your answer to those charges was going to be?
No, and none of them, I didn't have any witnesses. So
do you mean when you went to trial?
Yeah, and it's, I needed to know where I'd gone or what had happened, but, I didn't have any witnesses. That's why I was found guilty. I had no witnesses, but I told them what had happened.
It's not contained in this report, but in the witness statement of Andrew Coles to this inquiry, it's paragraph 150 for those who want the reference. He suggests that what was happening at this meeting was an attempt to concoct evidence or concoct a defence. What do you say to that?
No, I didn't need to. I told them what had happened. That was it.
In your witness statement, we can bring it up if you want to look at it, but you do say that one person ended up being a witness for you. Do you want to see the paragraph?
Yeah, can I see the name? Who else? What other names are there?
I'm not sure that we have those immediately available.
I've got my statement.
But do you have an unredacted version of your statement in front of you?
I think so. I don't know.
So it's page 67. Is where 66 to 67, where you deal with this. So I think you know not to say the names that are redacted in front of you.
They're not on here anyway. They're all redacted as well. I don't know the. If I know the names, then I can say, but I can't remember offhand. I didn't think any one of them was. But if I've if I've said it in my statement, I need to see what name.
All right, if we have a look, we'll have a look at what your statement says, and then perhaps we can assist you with the name. So you
Okay.
don't give a name in your statement, but at paragraph 6.16, about halfway down, do you see the sentence, it was simply to ascertain? It was simply to ascertain what had happened that night.
Yes.
See that? Cole
Yeah.
says we were there trying to concoct evidence, but we weren't, and only one person ended up being a witness for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then
Is
I'd
that-
say that's my yeah. Then one person did then, but I can't remember offhand who.
I think
But yeah, no. This I would have said this more recently. So yeah, one person.
I think I'm being very ably assisted by somebody writing down a list of the names. I'm not going to ask you to read any of them.
Yeah.
out.
No, I won't say them.
And can I just
Yeah. No, I just. It's quite difficult looking at a document where everything's is all privacy. It doesn't ring any bells.
No, understood. Just bear with us one moment.
Okay.
What I'm going to hand you is a note via the chairman of 4 names. These are the names that are in your witness statement.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can get you a list of the names in the underlying document. Can you just show that to the chairman first, please? So that's those ones there. So Jessica, those are the names that are privacy redacted at paragraph 6.15 at the top of page 67. Do you see your witness statement says, I note that MPS 0742251 lists privacy, and Joe Tex, all of whom I remember being there.
Yeah.
Those 4
yeah.
names.
No, there is one name on there that was a witness. Yeah. Sorry, I've forgotten.
All right, do you want to just mark that for us? Put a circle around the person
Yeah,
who is
sure.
a witness, unless it was Joe Tex, whose name is not privacy redacted.
No, it wasn't him. Yeah, sorry, no, I've forgotten about that.
All right. Right, we'll keep that record. We can't say that in a public hearing, but we'll keep that record and make sure that everybody who needs to know knows which name you've circled.
Yes.
So one of the names listed was somebody who you remember giving evidence for you.
Yes, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, because there was no one else had seen anything, so he was the only person that had seen something, or that had seen my arrest.
So we're just checking that that is one of the names in the document, and it is.
Okay.
So that person gave evidence, and that person was also at the meeting.
Yes.
Was there any discussion with that person? It's a him. I think I can say that.
Yeah.
About the nature of the evidence that he could give for you.
No, it would have been had he seen anything, and if he'd seen it, would he be a witness? But if he didn't, there was no asking anybody. And I think Andy says himself that he said he didn't see anything, wasn't asked to be a witness. You know, there's no. I wouldn't ask someone that hadn't seen something. So, like, no, in the way that he's suggesting that happened, it just didn't.
Had you instructed lawyers by this time, by the time you were due in court?
Yes, yeah.
And had your lawyers suggested this meeting, or was it just something that you had decided to do yourself?
It was nothing to do. I don't think it was anything to do with the lawyers.
Had you known that there was a police officer either observing this or learning about it, would you have carried on having the discussion?
There was nothing to hide. I mean, maybe it wasn't. You know, maybe it could have been. Well, obviously, it was construed in the wrong way, but there was nothing to hide, and there's nothing privileged stuff. You know, we also, like the parents were also SABs, and they actually like cooked for us all and that as well. So it wasn't just sort of for this. You know, that was an important part of it because I just didn't know what had happened. And I remember that actually I think Joe was arrested as well at that point.
That's Joe
At that
Tex?
night, yes, Tax, yeah.
Tax, sorry.
Yeah.
I think you say in your witness statement that you don't actually remember HN2 being present at this meeting?
No, I don't.
Do you have a positive recollection either way, that he was there, that he was not there, for example, or is it just that you can't remember?
I just can't remember him being there, but I also don't remember Walter being there either.
And he is listed as being.
Yeah. So no, I think that's more like a issue with what I remember of it, rather than saying he wasn't there. It's just I don't remember him being there or Walter.
Thank you. Can we look, different topic, at another report? It's MPS 0747438. It's dated the 4th of December 1992. B19, sir, in your bundle. Thank you. That may be an incorrect reference, sir. I'll just wait for 4th of December 1992. It should be. Oh, sorry. Can we have a look at the next page on the screen, just to make, sorry, the next page rather than the first page? Oh, sorry, it's my mistake. Yes, it's 23rd of March 1993. I think that may be. I've got the wrong reference in that case. Sorry, bear with me. Bear with me one moment, I've got the wrong reference. Could we try, I'm sorry, this may be wrong, do one more try in case this is the correct reference, 0746517 on the 15th of December 1992, and if not, I will have to abandon the point for now. And can we go down, please, to the next page? No, it's my error. We'll have to come back to that point, perhaps after we have a Rule 10 break, if I need to. Thank you. Could we try then, please, MPS 0746505? And to look at the substance. Jessica, it's 11th of August 1993, so after you'd come back from France. And can we look at the substance of the report? Sorry. It's that Privacy has left London and moved into a housing cooperative in Privacy. So it's about somebody else. But I want to draw your attention to the second paragraph in particular. It says Privacy's former home at Jessica's South London address, so the Streatham address, is now occupied by an individual NM, Privacy and EAB. You are described there, so in August 1993, as a frequent visitor to the house, having formed a romantic liaison with one of those individuals. So does it follow from this, in terms of the chronology, that by August of 1993, your relationship with HN2 had come to an end and your new relationship had begun?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I can't be like 100%, but yeah, like around that sort of time. So yes, I can't say that it's wrong.
So it's a matter of maybe 8 to 10 weeks between when you get back from France, maximum, back from France, have broken up with HN2 and are starting a new relationship. That's the sort of timescale, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
And it's here describing you as a frequent visitor to the house rather than a resident. So that might suggest that you entered the new relationship before you moved into your South London address. Again, does that sound about right in terms of the sequence of events?
Yeah, it could be. I don't have I can't give you a definite answer, but yeah, it could be, yes.
The report suggests that Andrea McGann was likely to move into the South London address as well in September. Again, does that assist with your
Yes,
recollection at all,
yeah.
that she moved in?
Yeah, she must. Yeah, I thought maybe she was there beforehand, but she may have been there beforehand. But yes, or moved in afterwards. And that it's really difficult because people stayed in other people's houses and stuff. It wasn't always easy to know who actually lived there.
And in terms of your reaction to this report, learning about it now, this is obviously a police report recording what's referred to here as a romantic liaison between you and somebody. What's your reaction to learning that those aspects of your life were being reported on by HN2?
It's pointless. At what purpose did it serve? It seems a bit kind of nosy and none of his business. And I don't understand why. I don't see what the point of it was really.
Can we look at one more report in a similar vein? MPS 0746 546. And this is a report from the 29th of March 1994. It's your B27, sir. And we see it's a report, is it not, with the subject, your new partner, as we've been referring to him, at the South London address, and you are described there as his girlfriend under associates.
Yeah.
If we look, please, at the body of the report towards the bottom of that first page. He is described there as awaiting the outcome of several court cases. And the report says this: as a result, he has acceded to pressure from his girlfriend Jessica to abstain from illegal ALF activity. To your knowledge, had your new partner been involved in illegal ALF activity in 1993 and 1994 when you were with him?
No. And there's no. I don't know what he's like. That's it. There's no more. There's no other suggestion of what he actually means. Or I haven't seen anything. So I don't know if he's trying to refer to something specific. I don't know what. So no, I don't. That's not right.
It goes on that's your new partner's recent animal rights activities have been limited to hunt and angling sabotage. Was your new partner involved in hunt and angling sabotage?
Yes, yeah, we both were.
And was that the extent of your animal rights action, if I could put it that way?
Yeah.
The height of it?
Yes, and like the regular sort of demos and things as well. But yeah, I don't. It's also vague, and I don't know if he's trying to refer to something specific. But there's nothing. It's just speculation with like no basis, as far as I can see. I can't think of anything that he could even try and suggest was an illegal activity.
It goes on to say this about you: Jessica also seems to have lost interest in illegal activity following the raid by police on Jessica's South London address. Firstly, do you recall a police raid on the South London address?
Yes, I do.
And can you describe what happened from your point of view?
Yes, yeah. I referred to it earlier, the ALIU raid on the maths place. So far as it was some of the people that lived in our house they were part of the ALIU. We never were. So we were both. That's why we were both at home at the time. And someone, I think one or maybe two people, it's a bit vague, were stopped and arrested. And for some reason, I don't know whether it was after finding out about Andy. I don't know whether it was him that gave our address, because somebody gave our address who didn't live there. And so we were raided.
And when you say raided, what did you experience?
A knock at the door and like half a dozen guys in hazmat suits with masks on and like a policeman at the door and like police vans everywhere, and they came in and lifted up the floorboards in some rooms, and because we were like he and I were the only people in, so we had to sort of observe the search as they went round the house. So yeah, it was a few hours of them searching the house.
Had you ever experienced anything like that before?
No.
And how did you feel as it was happening?
Angry, to be honest, but angry because somebody gave her address who didn't live there, and it felt at the time it felt a bit suspicious. You know, it hadn't been like no one had agreed to, you know, people saying like this is, you know, to give this address and that, so it always felt like there was something a bit suspicious about it. But you know, like things were broken, like they broke some things, and it took a lot of stuff, including Andrea's computer with her dissertation on it, which never worked again when it came back. Lots of sabbing walkie-talkies, which never worked again. So a lot of things were taken, and things were done to them, and like when we got them back, they were useless. So the whole thing felt a bit suspicious.
The report here that the inquiry is attributed, or certainly the intelligence is attributed to HN2, suggests that it caused you to lose interest in illegal activity. Were you interested in participating in, or otherwise showing interest in participating in illegal activity before the raid took place?
No, not at all. I think at that point it was exactly the same as what we'd always done. It was it was sabbing, it was demos, and you know, these are just words that are put in, I think, to make it look like we were serious ALF activists when that wasn't the case.
Did the raid have any impact on your animal rights activities at all?
No, because we weren't doing anything illegal. So it didn't interfere with, you know, the demos or the sabbing. So no.
Thank you. Can we go back to the previous reference? It was the correct reference. It's MPS 0747438. Your B19, sir. What I omitted to mention was that it's page 6 that we need, please. This is a document that consists of a number of reports put together in one. And the report I want to ask you about is this one, dated the 4th of December of 1992, please. It is in fact a report about somebody else, but we see from the substance that she is described as a school friend of yours, recently moved to Brixton from Jessica's East London address. And I want to draw your attention to what is said, although it's about her. It suggests she's a committed hunt saboteur who regularly engages in sabotaging the Surrey Union and Old Surrey and Burstow hunts, responsible for informing ALF activists of the intensive chicken farm raid in Elstead, subsequently raided by them in the summer of 1992. Could that be a reference to the Great Hookley Farm?
Yes, yeah, it is.
And maintaining close contact with 2 activists who were probably responsible. Were you informed? The report doesn't suggest that it was you, but were you ever informed about that raid, the Great Hookley raid, by somebody who was also a school friend of yours?
No, none of these people were school friends. The person that I shared the house, the East London address, we went to college together, but no, that's wrong about the school friend. I think the first 2 were maybe school friends, but they weren't school friends of mine.
I see. So the first 2 privacies might have been friends with each other.
I think they were, yeah,
but not with you.
No, I mean I knew the person that this report is about. She and I were friends. didn't really know the other one, but I think they were school friends, and that's wrong about me being a school friend.
But your evidence, as I understand it, was it wasn't her who informed you about the Great Hookley farm raid.
No.
Is there any possibility that she was someone who mentioned it to you and got you involved?
Not to me, no. I don't know whether she mentioned anything to Andy about it, but I found out from him, so no, she wouldn't have been. She may have been like further down the chain, but she certainly didn't say anything to me.
Thank you. And then can we go over the page, please, to look at the next part of the report? And what I want to look at in particular is the final paragraph, please, which says this: Privacy has not been involved in ALF activity herself, but it is believed that she was due to take part in the ALIU inspection of Rentokil on the 2nd of December 1992, and only her illness prevented her from taking part. In his witness statement, it's paragraph 206 for those who want the reference, HN2 alleges that you were involved in planning a liberation raid on Rentokil in Guildford. Were you involved in planning a liberation raid on Rentokil in Guildford?
No, and I don't, as far as I know, like Rentokil are like a pest control people. I don't understand why to raid. I don't think they have animals. I'm not sure what this is about. Whether it's the only place it was near Guildford. I think it's almost classed as Guildford. Was the maths place? So whether this is confused with that, but I don't understand why there'd be a raid on a Rentokil place. As far as I know, they're pest control. I don't think they have animals. So I don't really understand this.
And what about an ALIU inspection of Rentokil? Were you ever aware of that?
I didn't have anything to do with ALIU.
This report suggests that it took place on the 2nd of December 1992. Do you know where you were?
I would have been in France.
The 2nd of December 92.
Yeah, so no, I don't know about this at all. Like I say, I'm not sure the Rentokil part of that is right. But no, I mean, I was in France anyway. I hadn't seen that bit.
Thank you. Just two relatively short topics left from me. Could I ask you about a couple of documents that were disclosed to you, which originate from your special branch file, so not reporting that the inquiry is attributed directly to HN2 Andrew Coles, but some documents that showed up on your file that were disclosed to you. The first is MPS 0740939, please. It's B13, sir, in your bundle. And what the inquiry understands this to be, Jessica, is the minute sheet to your file, so recording the various contents of the special branch file.
Okay.
And can we look, please, at the first minute on the top of the left-hand page? It appears to indicate that your file was made up, so created, as the inquiry understands it, on or about the 1st of September of 1992. Now, it follows, I think, from your evidence that by the time your file was created, you were already in a relationship with HN2 Andrew Coles.
Yes.
And
probably in France, I think, or certainly going to France if I wasn't there already.
by the 1st of September 1992, as I understand your evidence, you would have been involved in a number of huntsabs.
Yes.
The only activity you would have been involved in, you say, properly described as ALF activity, is the Great Hookley farm.
Yes.
Where the chickens were taken. Could we just zoom back out, please, and zoom in on the bottom handwritten minute, bottom of the first page, please. Thank you. And when I ask you this question, Jessica, if you want, you can have available to you a photograph that's at MPS 0740955. I hope there's also a version for the chairman, unredacted, because it's fully redacted on the system to protect your anonymity. And that's a photograph that the inquiry also located on your special branch file. Do you follow?
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to read this minute that is dated the 19th of October 1992 and was signed by Detective Inspector HN67, who was then the Detective Inspector in the SDS, so in the squad that HN2 was serving in. Do you follow? He was a manager of HN2 at the time.
Yes.
And he wrote this minute for the information of DS, so it's the name's redacted. Information from a secret and reliable source states that Jessica's photograph is now a poor likeness. She now has very short hair and is much less feminine in appearance. Continue action as at minute 3. Asked about this, HN2 Andrew Cole says that the secret and reliable source there will be a reference to him giving that information. Firstly, how accurate is it to suggest that you, by October 1992, had very short hair?
Yeah, no, I didn't. And that's the photos that I included, so the ones of me in France in the December of 93 shows like my hair is like virtually sort of 3/4 of the way down my back. There's no way it could have that, I didn't have my hair cut. For a long, long time I had really long hair.
The photograph that was on your special branch file that appears to have been what was being looked at. Are you able to date that? Do you know when that?
Well, it looks. I think I still got long hair. Yeah, well, I have long hair in there, but no, not really. It's quite difficult to. It's not the greatest picture. But I mean, it would have been like around sort of that time. But I didn't have my hair cut. I never had it cut before I went to France. I had long hair. I've got pictures of me with long hair when I was in France and the ones when I went back over. So I hadn't had my hair cut. So this is just not right.
And what's your reaction to HN2 having reported back that she now has very short hair and is much less feminine in appearance?
I mean, I don't see the point. I mean, what was it meant to be like offensive? I don't know. But also, I wasn't even in, I wasn't in the country at the time, so I don't really understand it. And it's, I mean, frankly, like however many pages it is, like special branch report on me having my hair cut, I think it's a bit pathetic. I really, I mean, come on. Yeah, I don't, it's just ridiculous.
Can we take that document down? I just want to ask you about one more that was found on your file, MPS 0740953 C2. And to be clear, this is not a report that the inquiry considers emanated from the SDS, but it does appear to contain information that may have been reported by the SDS. Do you follow? So put together within special branch, not within the SDS itself, as the inquiry understands it, but about you. And can I just ask you about a couple of aspects of this? Firstly, slightly counterintuitively, can we look at paragraph 8 on the second page? So this, a report in October, about a month after the file's open, says this, that you first came to the notice of this branch in June 1992, when secret information received reported that she is an animal activist. And then it gives your associates and suggests that you frequented the Hopefield Animal Sanctuary in Brentwood, which is in Essex. First coming to the notice of special branch in June 1992, again after you had met HN2 Andrew Coles, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
And when you were already in a relationship with him?
Yes.
Did you frequent an animal sanctuary in Brentwood in Essex?
No, never been there.
You were shown this report also before you gave your witness statement, and you pointed out that it asserts that you didn't have a passport
Yes.
It's October 1992. Were you working in France by
Yes.
the time this report was written?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We can,
Sorry, can I have a look at the first page again?
yes.
And yeah, I mean, I just noticed they failed to trace my birth details in St Catherine's House. Yeah, I hadn't sort of, I'd not noticed that before. I wondered whether, I wondered why, or the fact that they tried to trace like my birth details. I don't know whether that was. I know they did it for like the stealing dead children's identities, but I didn't. Why would they have chosen to like look for my details? Whether it had anything to do with me being adopted. But sorry, that's just an aside. But I just noticed sort of that.
Could we just clarify, Jessica's obviously a cipher that we're using to protect your true identity. The name, the real name that you were using in the early 1990s, was that do you know whether that's the name that you were given at birth or the name you were given upon
No.
being adopted?
It wasn't the name I was given at birth, but it was. My birth certificate doesn't have the name I had as a baby on it. It has my actual name, so my parents' name.
All right, thank you. Can we take that down? Final topic. Jessica, I just want to ask you about your reaction, really, to discovering that HN2 was an undercover officer. You explain in your witness statement that you found out early in February 2017 from Paul Gravett, who you'd known from Hackney and Islington Animal Rights. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he alerted you, I think, to a Facebook page concerning articles about undercover officers having been in the group. Is that the way that it came about? And you then saw a picture of HN2.
Yes.
How did you feel when you came across that picture?
I mean, it was probably about 10 minutes. Like, I found out that what spy cops were, the name and what had happened. And then sort of 10 minutes after that to then see his picture. I couldn't quite get my head around it. In some ways, the whole thing was like, I just found it quite like ridiculous. But also, it made a lot of sense of our relationship. There were things I didn't doubt it. I know sort of some people when they hear about them, don't take some convincing. But I didn't. It suddenly there was a lot of things that made sense, but yeah, it just there's no feeling sort of like it. It's like huge parts of my life I didn't have the control and the agency over that I thought I did, and that I've been sort of steered and manipulated into a relationship that wasn't really what I wanted, but I went along with. And the worst part, the worst part was my age. To know that at that age, someone so much older, not who he said he was, that it made me feel disgusting. That it's disgusting. For so much older. I'd had issues, and just the exploitation of me. Yeah, it's something I haven't it's something I can't get over. I can't I can't come to terms with it properly. Yeah.
And I won't take you through all of the details, but you set out in your witness statement, page 46 and onwards, the impact that it's had on your mental health. And I think that continues, is that right?
Yes.
To this day.
Yeah.
Can I ask you this? So you've given an account of a relationship with Andrew Coles, HN2, known to you as Andy Van at the time, which he has denied in his witness statement and publicly. How do you feel about the denials that he has made?
It exacerbates everything, because at the same time I feel like I'm trying to prove that I'm not lying. You know, I'm telling the truth. Why? I don't know why anyone would want to, no offence, but would want to do this. You know, I've had to sit here, I've had to completely humiliate myself, you know, to try and prove I'm not lying. I'm not lying about it. Why would I? So it's made it so much more difficult. And, you know, the fact of who he is and his position, you know, when I found out he was like a Conservative councillor and, you know, in another position of power. And that's the thing is, you know, when I was a teenager, he had the power that I didn't have, and he completely abused it. And the thought that he's in that same position of power again, he could do it again to someone else. And it felt my responsibility to warn people, to tell them what he's like. So I did. That's why I was, you know, I went up, I don't know how many times, to Peterborough, and I put leaflets out just to tell people what he did when he was like undercover, and just to warn people, because I don't want anyone else to feel the way that I have felt since finding out. And if people up there, you know, friends of his telling me I'm a liar, he did nothing wrong and I should just leave him alone. And I feel like I'm fighting all the time to try and prove that I'm not lying. Yeah, it's made it a lot harder. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, it's all right. Right, Jessica, those are all the questions that I want to ask you. Okay. I haven't been notified of any Rule 10 questions. I'm looking around. I'm not seeing any indication that there are any. So on that basis, I will sit down, and if there's any re-examination, no.
Ms. Kilroy?
I don't have anything further I want to say, unless there's anything you want to say.
No, I'd just like to go, please.
Yes. Of course you may. Thank you for attending today and giving evidence in circumstances that I know are not easy for you, and that I am aware is a considerable understatement. I know that yesterday arrangements were unsettled, and that increased your difficulty. Thank you for surmounting them and giving evidence as clearly as you have done.
Okay, thank you.
Right. We will resume tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
All right.